Hi Zoe, what's the crack?
G'day Tizzie. The crack is that we are on episode number 7 today, which is really exciting.
So,
do you want the crack or do you just want the book?
So we have the book here and we're now starting chapter 2, feeding in the first 2 weeks. But we've sort of already talked about chapter 2, feeding in the first 2 weeks, you know, routine feeding in the first 2 weeks versus demand feeding. I don't know, I feel like we've covered a lot of that.
Yeah.
So we talked about at one point when the baby's very, very first born, if you're able to put the baby on you and allow the baby to find the breast. I wish I could put the clock back and be able to do that with one of my children. Can you try and do it with this one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I live through you,
really,
even though
want to do that?
You know, I don't know, like.
No, I'm definitely asking if we can try very hard to do that if all goes to plan, and
let the baby
we'll get
find
it on
the
video.
boob, and because apparently the baby will crawl and find the boob only the first time. Yes. You can't do it 3 or 4 feeds later. Yeah. You have to do it at the very first feed. So let's talk about routine and demand feeding. So we know that in the ideal world you would demand feed, but we can't demand feed now because a lot of us, our very first baby is the very first baby we've been round. Like, you know, years ago, grandmothers didn't work. They were there to help you. They did help. So, like years ago, a grandmother would come to visit you.
Or live in the house
Or live in the house next door.
Yeah.
Like in Ireland, you know, you'd have 3 or 4 or 5 families all living next to each other in the houses in Belfast and so on, you know. And so it used to be that like your mum might see you for 3 or 4 hours every day. So when she gave you a little bit of advice today, you'd take it on. And then when she gave you a little bit of advice next week, you'd take it on. But now your mum might visit for 1 day every month. Yeah. Or even if you're like me, it might be 1 day every 6 months. And when grandmother starts giving you all this advice, it feels like interfering because it's too much advice at once.
Yeah, because you're not just getting it from grandma anymore, you're getting it from everyone.
So you don't learn the baby's feeds. The baby's cries. You don't learn the baby's cries. You don't learn that this is the baby's hungry cry, this is the baby's tired cry. So you don't have to follow a routine. You could demand feed. And the way to demand feed is to feed your baby when your baby cries a hungry cry. The routines are great if you start them at first so that you can learn the different cries. Now, it's really, really important to put your breasts on a routine in hospital the very first day because otherwise, can I swear, your boobs are so mucked up that you can't actually breastfeed. It's painful and it's sore and it's agony. So you take your little finger and put it in your mouth and suck it for 25 minutes every day. Do that, Zoe. You know the way you did the experiment with the... don't do it now because you won't be able to talk. You know the way you did the experiment with Luke Smodley? You get Luke to get his finger every night for 25 minutes and suck it. If you suck your finger for 25 minutes a night for 3 weeks, you will see that finger will start to get sore and cracked and bleeding. Yeah. Why would you do that to your nipples? Yeah. Some cultures teach you to put the baby on each boob for a set amount of time and condition your nipples, right? This is what I'm teaching in my feeding book. So the feeding book, the Save Our Sleep feeding book, the Save Our Sleep feeding book is not about solids. It's mostly 60% is about breast and formula feeding in the first few weeks, right? So put your breasts on a routine. So it's 3 minutes on each side in the first day, 6 minutes each side in the next 24 hours until your milk comes in.
Every 3 hours.
Every 3 hours. When your milk comes in, then you are going to allow your baby to feed for longer. Now, we touched in the last episode with the feeding, we say to, feed for 25 minutes on one breast. Now, that is up to 25 minutes. If your breast is empty, you'd obviously stop. And it includes burping. And it doesn't include burping. So you feed for 3 minutes, take the baby off, stop your stopwatch. Burp till your baby is winded. Then start your stopwatch when the baby goes back on the boob. It's 25 minutes of sucking time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's really good. My advice would be follow a routine from day one.
Yes.
And use the bedding. The bedding is really, really important. Then, when your baby is settled and happy, try demand feeding. Try going with the demand. And if you can interpret your baby's cries, great. And then you'll demand feed. And then you'll find that your baby's actually feeding at the times in the Save Our Sleep routine anyhow. Now, why are the breastfeeding routines different to the bottle feeding routines? That is because the routines, the breastfeeding routines, are based on what the mother's needs are. And the bottle feeding routines are based on what the baby's needs are. Because when you're feeding your baby either expressed breast milk in a bottle or infant formula in a bottle, you can go by the baby's time. So the baby can go 4 hours, which is the best time to feed a baby, because the milk quality is not going to change. But when you're breastfeeding, you need to condition your boobs. Your boobs need to get used to feeding. If you fed 4 hourly from day one, your breast milk would dry up, right? So that's why we do that. Now, we talk a lot about breastfeeding. We also need to touch on bottle feeding. A few things about bottle feeding. I often hear people talking about, like the other day, a mum was saying how she had filled a bottle with, she'd boiled the kettle, filled the bottle with boiling hot water, and then she was trying to cool the water to put the powder in. Some people were saying that you should make the milk up and push it in the fridge. That's not recommended anymore. It's now recommended that you make the bottles up fresh. But what you can do is you can boil the water, put the water into the bottles in the fridge with the amount in it, so that job's already done. Then you can take the bottle of hot water out of the fridge. So what I used to do was, if I was feeding my baby 180 mils, I would put 140 mils, and you'd have to work it out on your particular bottles. Glass bottles are better than plastic. Glass bottles keep the water warmer for longer. But let's say you have 180 mil feed. You can put 140 mils of hot water in the bottle in the fridge. Then, at the feed time, you take the bottle out, boil the kettle, top that water in the fridge up by 40 mils. And then the water is the right temperature. Then add the formula in and shake it. Or you can take the bottle out of the fridge and put the water only in the microwave. Heat the water to the correct temperature and then add the powder. There isn't a lot of advice given to bottle feeding mums. No. And I think the advice is, needed, So that I find that really helps with the water and so on. Yeah. And so don't microwave the milk, but you can microwave the water.
That makes so much sense.
And then with sterilising, like as soon as you take the bottle out of the steriliser, it's not sterile anyhow. So you've got to be really careful that everything that comes in contact with the formula is really, really clean.
Yeah, of course you do. Yes.
Do you have other questions about the feeding in the first couple of weeks?
Oh, I just wanted to make a note about demand feeding and the difference between some babies. So I know, for example, Otto, I could not have demand fed because he didn't have the energy or stamina to necessarily either be awake or to demand for the feed. Do you know what I mean? So I think I would really appreciate feel comfortable being on a routine with my newborn, waking them up for that feed and encouraging that feed, because I think that not all babies can demand, for whatever their own reasons are, can demand for that feed at the right time for them. That was just a little point that I had highlighted.
And that obviously I say that in the book, that some babies are too sleepy to demand feeds.
Just trying to see if I've got anything else highlighted here.
Oh, I know what I wanted to say. Expressing. I get asked this all the time. So if you're feeding your baby expressed breast milk, expressed from the breast, but in a bottle. So some women, for various reasons, either cannot medically, choose not to, don't like it, don't want to. There's all sorts of reasons why some women have milk but choose not to breastfeed their baby. Lots of reasons, like it can be you can have had trauma. There's all sorts of reasons, and none of us should ever question why. And it's perfectly acceptable if you want to feed your baby formula, and it's perfectly acceptable if you want to express and feed your baby express breast milk. breastfeeding is lovely, and for some people and not for others, and for some babies and some it doesn't work. Like if you look at the animal kingdom, there are sheep and cows and other animals where the mother sheep does not produce enough milk. And because the mother doesn't produce enough milk, the animal is given to another mother to feed. Like, this happens. It's not just humans.
Yeah,
But I get asked all the time, what if I'm giving my baby a bottle of express breast milk? Do I follow the bottle feeding routine or do I follow the breastfeeding routine?
Yep.
So do you understand the question?
I do.
So if you're feeding your baby breast milk, but from a bottle, which routine? So the answer is the mother's breasts need to be on the breastfeeding routine in the first 8 weeks.
Yep.
It's all about when you milk the breasts.
Yep.
When you remove the milk from the breast. That needs to be done at the times on the breastfeeding routine. But the baby needs to go on the bottle feeding routine unless you're doing 1 or 2 breastfeeds, if you're doing all bottle, right? So baby goes on the bottle feeding routine, and then you adjust the routine to put expressing times in roughly. So, for example, breastfeeding baby would breastfeed at 10 o'clock, so mum would express at 10 o'clock. The bottle fed baby would feed at 11, so mum would express at 10 o'clock and then have that milk for the 11 o'clock feed. It doesn't always work out that way. You'll have to sit down and work out a routine for yourself, but that's what you do. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, definitely.
What if you can't express? So we covered that a little bit when we talked about engorgement. So in the last episode, the question in the last episode, if you cannot express, then you will not be able to follow the routines in the first 8 weeks exactly, because you need to express for growth spurts. But if you can't express, I do wonder if maybe you don't have a good enough supply, or maybe your baby is really good at milking those breasts and you're actually, for some reason, not able to express. It could even be you don't like the feeling of the pump on your breasts, So if you can't express, you could give your baby some formula during growth spurts or give your baby extra feeds when they're having the growth spurts. You'll just have to allow for extra feeds. It's not ideal. Your baby will become a little bit colicky because breasts on a routine produce nice, thick, creamy milk. Breasts not on a routine produce what people call a foremilk and a hindmilk. It's a different quality of milk. Babies who are fed on demand and incorrectly, so not when they cry a hungry cry, but when they cry any cry, they get this watery foremilk continuously. It gives them reflux, it gives them pains in their tummy, it makes them unsettled, they don't sleep well, and they're never full. And the other thing is they're really, really big. I have seen lots of babies who are demand fed put on so much weight.
Wow.
And I think it's because their bodies think they're not getting enough food. Because I know when I don't eat, I put on heaps of weight.
Okay, yeah.
So that's interesting, if you can't express. So if you can't express, it's okay. If you're going to use some infant formula, that's okay. And if you're not, then you might not be able to follow the routines. You might have to do extra feeds.
So if you're introducing the formula to allow for a growth spurt, is that then going to take longer for your breasts to then... what's the word? Start producing enough milk for the baby that has now grown. That was really poorly worded.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm trying to say there? So if you're topping up, so you're telling your boobs that they're supplying enough milk.
Yeah.
Because you're not expressing and you're giving the formula to the baby and the baby's having a growth spurt right now and a week later they've had the growth spurt, it's then going to take your breasts a bit longer to go, I need to produce a bit more here. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So
you just got to work through that. Be prepared for that.
You would be putting so it's a good idea, even if you think that there isn't much milk coming out, it's a good idea to let the baby suck for a bit longer.
Yep.
Because it kind of fools your body into thinking that there is milk coming out and will get you.
Yeah.
Bodies have a great way of
adjusting.
But
needs.
yes, you are right.
Yeah.
If you've been feeding on a routine and you don't express for the growth spurt, yes, it will take longer for your breast to catch up.
Yeah. And am I right in saying sleep regressions? There's a well-known sleep regression, I don't know what age it is, which a lot of people talk about and they don't necessarily have a reason behind it, but am I right in saying that you believe that one of those at least is because that's when the vast majority of babies go through a growth spurt and they're not getting...
people talk about the 4-month sleep regression, the 6-month sleep regression, the 8-month sleep regression. Well, people who have followed Save Our Sleep from day one, done it correctly with all of the bedding, and started solids at 16 weeks. Their babies don't have sleep regressions. Yeah. It's like they don't exist. So, and then people talk about leaps.
Yes,
and
that's another word.
Sleeps. But leaps are just needs. Like, so a baby of 1 week needs this. A baby of 2 weeks needs this. Like, so they're not... This isn't happening because of leaps. Like, it's happening, and sleep regressions aren't happening... They're happening because the baby's needs aren't met.
Yeah,
like the baby's just growing and developing, and its needs aren't being met. If your needs are met, then they don't have sleep regressions. A sleep regression at 8 weeks is because they've started daytime sleep cycles. A sleep regression at 16 weeks, 4 months, is because they're hungry and they don't have enough iron in the body anymore. A sleep regression at 6 months is not because they're teething, it's because they're starting to sleep in nighttime sleep cycles.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So...
And I love that, and it brings us back to that Save Our Sleep is not about sleep training. Here, you are preventing these regressions. Yeah, that's pretty clever.
And let's get away from sleep training and let's prevent sleep problems by feeding correctly.
Yeah.
And feeding your baby until they're full. That's the other thing. So if you're breastfeeding, you should feed your baby until they're full. And so many people say, my baby's screaming, I've got to use a dummy, they're screaming, like I gave them 120 mils, and like why do people say that a baby's tummy is the size of a pea? How is a breastfed baby's tummy a different size to a bottle-fed baby's tummy? How?
Yeah.
Were Otto and Sid's tummies different sizes because one was breastfed and one was fed with express breast milk in a bottle?
No.
So these people say that a baby's tummy is the size of a pea,
right, or
the size of an acorn when it's born, and that's all the breast milk it needs. Well, so that's a breastfeeding baby. But in the bed, 2 beds down, is a bottle-fed baby, and the midwife comes in and says, "You're bottle feeding. Here's some SMA, which is a formula in the UK and Ireland. I want you to try the baby on 60 mil." So the bottle-fed baby has 60 mils, and the breastfed baby has the size of a pea. How does that work? It's absolutely ridiculous. So. And then mothers say to me, I'm feeding my baby. I've given it 140 mils. The tin says he's supposed to have 140 mils. Now he's screaming. Yeah. And then you're like, well, he's screaming because he's hungry. Yeah. Now, I could express gallons. I could probably express 250 mils out of one boob in 5 minutes, right? Yeah. So my baby... if it's feeding for 25 minutes, is it getting 400 mils? I'm not saying it is. I'm asking a question, So why then is the baby who started off having 60 mils when the breastfed baby was getting the size of an acorn or whatever, maybe 10 mils, So the breastfed baby's getting 10 mils and the formula-fed baby's getting 60 mils. Now we've rolled on to 3 months. The breastfed baby's getting 25 minutes sucking time, which could be giving it 200 or 300 mils, or even 180 mils, and the bottle-fed baby's only allowed 120 mils.
That doesn't make any sense.
Why? You feed your baby until it's full.
Breast or bottle.
Breast or bottle. And if your baby
is
sucking. Yes. And if your baby is or until they're vomiting. So if a baby is an overeater, which is very, very, very rare. But if a baby does overeat, it'll vomit.
Yeah, right.
It will have a projectile
pretty
vomit.
Obvious.
And then you give them less the next day.
Yeah.
So it's very, very... Okay, so how much should I feed my baby? That's in the book. We've covered that. That's good. You always feed your baby until your baby is full. And sterilising changes all the time. It depends where you live. And how clean your house is, and if you're using soap, if you're using breast milk. A lot of midwives will say that you need to be extra careful with formula milk. I don't know the reason exactly. Well, I suppose breast milk's got antibacterial in it, you know. So whether you're using breast or bottles for formula, etc., follow your local maternal health nurse. When your maternal health nurse comes to visit you, or your child health nurse, health visitor, depending on where you're listening from, or your Plunket nurse in New Zealand. Ask them what you should be doing, because they'll look at your house and they'll be pretty quick to know what you should be doing.
Sure.
Sterilising,
Yep.
etc.
Yep.
You know,
for how long and that
so
sort of thing. Yeah.
I think that's us covered on the
Yeah.
food and feeding in the
Done
first
well.
2 weeks.
Yep.
So let's have a reader's question. Do we have a reader's question?
Well, I will have one here somewhere. Let's hope that you've got
Ooh.
a reader and an answer for.
Do we have any more reader's questions? You just ask it.
So, I don't have the name of this person. Shall we pause? And
We can't pause. So I will talk about support and bedding and advice for a minute.
Yes.
And Zoe is going to find the reader's question. We're allowed to do this because I watched them do this on a Royal podcast the other day where they stopped and looked up how many followers they had on TikTok. Now, before we end, please remember, the reason for this podcast is to try and prevent sleep problems. I want you to get all of your pregnant friends to start watching these podcasts before they have their baby. I no longer want to solve sleep problems. I want to prevent sleep problems. Prevention. So come along to the website, get the correct bedding. In our last episode, we talked about how the Save Our Sleep mattress may be slightly softer, even though it's firm and safe, than other mattresses on the market and flathead syndrome. And someone's been and had a look at it for me and said, yes, the way it is made, it is still firm, but it's got lamb's wool. Now, lamb's wool is dangerous and a SIDS risk if you put a lamb's wool or sheepskin in your cot. But we have magically put it underneath the layer of cotton, organic cotton. And that apparently helps with the flathead syndrome. So not only is the Save Our Sleep mattress, are you going to use the Save Our Sleep mattress? Or you can't because you've got oval cots.
Oh no! I just said to Luke the other day that we're going to have to get a normal cot.
Oh,
because
do you know what
I
cot
need one
you
of your
need?
mattresses.
Do you know what cot you need?
A free one off Marketplace.
No, one off Tizzie. Have you seen my retro cot that I had for Kieran?
No.
Yeah, you saw it in the hub. That brown retro cot. It's like an oak cot.
It looks sort of like my oval one, but
yeah, and it's you need to borrow that for the baby.
Can I borrow it?
Yeah, and then you'll have a Save Our Sleep mattress.
Yay.
No, maybe not. I love that cot. No, your baby has to have that cot at my house. I'm having the baby. I've got a safe sleeping space for this baby. I am taking the baby. I am allowed, and you can take my
You
job.
give it to me every 3 hours to
Actually,
feed
come stay
him.
with me when you first have the baby, and we'll do nightly podcasts on how you're going, following the routine. Oh.